Ever notice how one little headline, it can be like the tip of the iceberg,
Hmm.
hinting at this giant story underneath?
Oh, absolutely.
I had that feeling big time with this whole elephant dragon tango thing.
Right.
That China's president, Xi Jinping, is suggesting to kind of mark 75 years of relations with India. It sounds, I don't know, kind of catchy at first, poetic even.
Yeah.
But then you remember what's been going on between them lately.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, there's got to be more to this. So we're diving in, right? We've got these diplomatic messages, all these official statements, and we're going to figure out what's really going on and, why you should care.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 75 years of diplomatic relations between two countries, and not just any two, but two that are such major players on the world stage. That's a big deal.
Huge deal.
And yeah, that dragon elephant tango image, it's definitely pretty evocative. But it does make you wonder, what kind of dance are we really talking about here?
Right. Like, what are the steps? So let's break it down. President Xi, he sent this message directly to India's President Murmu.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just like a happy anniversary kind of thing.
Hmm.
He's really emphasizing that both China and India, they're these ancient civilizations, like huge economic powerhouses now, and major voices in, what we call the global South. And he even used the phrase mutual achievement, which, I mean, it sounds like they're talking partnership,
But
right?
it does, at least on the surface, highlighting those shared roots and their current global influence. I mean, yeah, that definitely sets a positive tone. And focusing on mutual achievement, that suggests a potential win-win, at least in the way he's framing it. But you can't ignore the context.
Exactly. It's like trying to learn a tango while there's like an earthquake happening.
Right.
We can't forget about the eastern Ladakh region. For over 4 years now, it's been the site of a really serious military standoff.
Yeah.
So you got this talk about a harmonious dance happening, figuratively, but then this very real and ongoing conflict, like right there on the ground. It's such a contrast. Makes you think twice about what's really behind this whole tango offer.
It definitely adds another layer to it, right? Like, sure, maybe the idea of mutual benefit is there, in some areas. But that unresolved border issue, I mean, that casts a big shadow.
Big time.
It's a reminder that diplomatic language, it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
No matter how well-intentioned it sounds, you got to interpret it alongside the reality on the ground. Like, are there any friction points? Is there any history there? You can't ignore that stuff.
No, for sure. And it wasn't just the two presidents, talking. We also saw these congratulatory messages going back and forth between China's Premier Li Qiang and India's Prime Minister Modi.
Mm-hmm.
And President Murmu's response to all of this, it was pretty interesting,
Yeah.
very carefully worded, it seems. She basically said that a stable, predictable, and friendly relationship between India and China, well, that wouldn't just be good for them, it would be good for the whole world. And when you consider just how many people live in those two countries combined, her words carry a lot of weight.
They do. And it seems like she's really aiming for consistency,
Yeah,
less volatility, which, I mean, given the last few years, it's understandable. And the fact that she's emphasizing the global impact, that's key.
totally.
The relationship between India and China, I mean, it's not just a bilateral thing. It creates ripples far beyond their borders.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into President Xi's message.
Okay.
One thing that stood out to me, he specifically mentioned that both China and India, they're at this like critical stage of modernization.
Uh-huh.
That seems like a pretty important point.
Yes.
What do you think he's getting at by emphasizing that?
Well, I think it's interesting that he's highlighting this idea of a shared trajectory. Like, they're both going through these massive transformations right now across the board. And by pointing out this critical stage, I think he's implying that peace and mutual benefit, they're not just nice to haves. They're like essential if they want to keep this momentum going, if they want to reach those modernization goals. It's like he's saying, look, we both have these huge national projects going on, getting caught up in conflict. That would just throw us both off track.
Right, right. It's like we're both climbing this mountain. Why are we wasting energy fighting each other at base camp?
Exactly, exactly.
And he also really stressed taking a strategic long-term view of things. Almost like he was hinting that, maybe getting bogged down in these short-term issues hasn't really worked out for them in the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. Diplomatic relations, especially with countries that have such long and complex histories, they can easily get stuck in this cycle of reacting to every little thing,
Yep.
whatever pops up. And focusing on the long term, that requires you to look beyond the immediate disagreements. You got to focus on what you actually have in common in the long run. Or, at least where your interests might align in the future. It's about patience, about having a bigger vision.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. She said he's ready to work with President Murmu, and he lists these three things: enhancing strategic trust, boosting cooperation, and get this, ensuring border peace. Now, that last part, ensuring border peace, that really jumps out at me considering what's still going on in Ladakh.
Yeah.
It's almost like offering a handshake with one hand while, still holding a weapon in the other.
Right. It's this strange juxtaposition. On the one hand, you're saying, let's collaborate on border peace.
Right.
But on the other hand, the issues that caused those tensions, those are still there, largely unresolved. And it creates this weird kind of paradoxical situation.
It does.
It makes me think of, if you had neighbors arguing over a property line, and one of them's like, hey, let's work together to make our yards look nice. But they haven't actually settled the dispute about the fence.
Right.
It makes you question, how deep can that collaboration really go if you haven't dealt with the root of the problem?
Totally, totally. And it's not just the messages between, Xi and Murmu. We also heard from China's foreign ministry spokesperson, Guo Jiakun. He said something like, well, that history shows that a partnership for mutual success, that's the right choice for China and India. Again, very positive, very forward-looking.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like the official line from China, it really emphasizes this idea of collaboration. We have these historical connections. We can both benefit from working together. But even Guo Jikun himself admitted that historically, the relationship between these two countries, it hasn't always been smooth sailing. There have been times of cooperation, sure, but also a lot of tension.
Yeah, history's messy like that. Which brings us to some of the recent diplomatic stuff that's been happening. This whole tango idea didn't just come out of nowhere.
Right.
Last year, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, they actually had a meeting at the BRICS summit in Russia. And they specifically talked about stabilizing their relationship. I mean, that feels like a pretty big step in itself. And by the way, for anyone who's not familiar, BRICS, that's the group of these major emerging economies.
Yeah.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And it often becomes this platform for these sorts of talks, on the sidelines.
Right. It can be a really valuable space for that. And yeah, that meeting between Modi and Xi, it was a big deal. It showed that both sides recognized that they needed to, manage these differences. They didn't want things to escalate any further. And having that high-level interaction, even if it was, kind of informal, on the sidelines of another event, it creates those opportunities to communicate directly and to start laying the groundwork for future engagement.
Okay, so since that meeting, there have been a bunch of other high-level discussions. In fact, they had diplomatic talks in Beijing just last month, in March 2025. And the things they were focusing on, I think those are really telling. Border management, boosting cross-border cooperation in different areas, and possibly restarting the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra.
Those are some pretty specific and practical steps, and they really highlight what both sides are prioritizing right now. Effective border management, that's key if you want to prevent future incidents.
Right.
Maintain some stability. Then you have cross-border cooperation and things like trade and investment, maybe infrastructure development. That kind of stuff can create economic links between the two countries.
Right. The more tied together, it's harder to, fight if you're also doing business.
Exactly. And then there's the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. That one has a lot of cultural and religious significance.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, it's this super important pilgrimage for Hindu devotees. And because of all the border tension, it had been put on hold. So the fact that they've agreed to restart it this year, along with some other people-to-people exchanges, like getting direct flights back up and running, those feel like real steps towards de-escalation, like they're actually trying to build some goodwill, and not just at the, the government level.
Yeah, it's like they're taking it beyond just the diplomats talking to each other.
Right.
And the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, that's a huge symbol. It means a lot to people in India.
Yeah.
And restoring those direct flights, well, that'll make it a lot easier for people from both countries to interact, to understand each other better.
Right.
And that can have a real ripple effect on the overall diplomatic climate. These are actions, not just words. And they show a willingness to address things that are important to the other side.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that the military discussions are still happening, right?
Oh, absolutely. We can't get ahead of ourselves. This isn't a done deal. The border issue, it hasn't just magically vanished because of these diplomatic gestures.
Right.
There's steps in the right direction, sure. But the underlying military tension, it's still there, a major challenge. And the negotiations, they're continuing through those established channels, like the working mechanism for consultation and coordination on India-China border affairs, or WMCC for short.
Right.
Their whole focus is on actually implementing what's already been agreed on and, keeping things peaceful in the border regions.
And we've seen some pretty high-level figures involved in these discussions, like India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, and China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi. But as you said earlier, neither side is claiming victory just yet. It feels like a really sensitive, drawn-out process.
It is. Managing a border that long and complicated, it takes constant effort from both sides. They gotta be committed to finding solutions they can both live with. And the fact that these senior officials are so involved, well, it shows how seriously both governments are taking this. But we're not seeing any big announcements yet. And, that just highlights how tricky this whole thing is.
It does. So if we take a step back and look at everything we've covered, what are the main takeaways for you? It seems like China, they're definitely pushing for diplomacy. India, well, they're focused on stability, especially along that border. And of course, the rest of the world, everyone's watching to see if these two major powers can figure out a way to get along.
Yeah, those are all key points. It's interesting how China uses this dragon-elephant tango metaphor. At least publicly, they're trying to frame things as a cooperative effort.
Right.
And then you have India emphasizing the need for a stable, predictable, and friendly relationship, which tells us their priority is security, especially with that unresolved border issue. And yeah, the whole world is watching because let's face it, with the economic and strategic power these two countries have, their relationship, it has huge implications for global stability.
It does. It does. So the big question is, will this elephant-dragon tango actually turn into a real partnership?
Yeah.
A well-coordinated dance? Or will it be more hesitant, more uncertain, maybe an awkward two-step with a few stumbles along the way?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, right? There have been some positive signs lately, diplomatically speaking. It shows they're at least willing to talk. But those deep-rooted challenges, especially the border, they're not going anywhere. Ultimately, how this tango plays out, it depends on whether both sides are willing to tackle those core issues.
Yeah.
While also building on the areas where they can actually cooperate and benefit from each other. It's not just about smoothing things over, for the short term.
Right.
It's about creating a new, more stable dynamic.
A long-term kind of groove.
Exactly.
One thing's for sure, this is a situation that's still very much developing.
Oh.
And anyone who's interested in global power dynamics, this is a relationship you can't afford to ignore.
Yeah. The relationship between India and China, it's going to keep shaping the geopolitical landscape for a long time to come. And if you want to understand the bigger picture, the global trends, the potential future scenarios, well, understanding the nuances of this relationship is essential.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something for you to think about. You've got this long history between India and China, and then you've got the economic competition that's inevitably going to happen, that they both, continue to grow. How do those things influence the steps and the movements in this elephant-dragon dance, even with all this talk of diplomacy? It's a fascinating mix of historical baggage, current realities, and future ambitions. And I, for one, am going to be watching closely to see how it all plays out.
Me too. There are a lot of moving pieces, that's for sure.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for joining me for another deep dive. Until next time.
Sounds good.